I strode into the building with a sense of trepidation and purpose, my heart racing as I adjusted the janitor's uniform I'd borrowed. This wasn't just any building. It was my family's company, the empire my father had spent his life building. But I wasn't here as a privileged daughter. Today, I was just another faceless worker. The plan was simple: blend in, observe, and uncover the truth about how our employees were being treated. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I walked in. "Maintenance?" she asked dismissively. I nodded, keeping my head down. "Yes, ma'am." "Break room needs cleaning," she snapped, not even bothering with pleasantries. It was my first taste of the disdain many employees faced. My father had always preached about treating workers with respect, but I was about to discover how far the reality was from his words. The break room reeked of stale coffee and resentment. Conversation stopped as I entered, all eyes turning to the new janitor. One of the employees, a man in his mid-30s with a condescending smirk, muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Guess they'll let anyone in here these days." I bit my tongue, reminding myself of my mission. As I wiped down the counters, I listened carefully to their conversations. Complaints about management, long hours, and unfair treatment echoed through the room. Later that day, I encountered Ava, the HR manager. She was supposed to be the bridge between employees and upper management, but her attitude told a different story. "Hey, janitor," she called out. "You missed a spot." Her tone dripped with superiority as she pointed to a nearly invisible smudge on the floor. I clenched my fists, forcing a smile. "Of course, ma'am. Right away." She scoffed and walked off, leaving me seething. If only she knew who I really was. Over the next few days, I witnessed things that left me furious. Employees were overworked, underappreciated, and treated like disposable cogs in a machine. Supervisors barked orders without a shred of respect, and Ava, the HR manager, seemed to take pleasure in belittling her staff. One incident stood out. A young intern named Lily was reduced to tears after a supervisor berated her for a minor mistake. "If you can't handle the pressure, maybe this isn't the place for you," he sneered. I stepped in, unable to hold back. "That's enough," I said firmly. He glared at me. "Stay out of it, janitor. This doesn't concern you." But it did concern me. These were my employees, and I wasn't going to let this slide. That evening, I found Lily in the break room, still wiping away tears. I sat down beside her, offering her a tissue. "Thanks," she whispered. "You don't deserve to be treated like that," I said softly. "No one does." She gave me a sad smile. "It's just how things are here. You get used to it." But I didn't want anyone to get used to it. After 2 weeks of blending in, I had seen enough. The employees weren't the problem. It was the toxic management culture. Ava and her team of supervisors had created an environment of fear and hostility. It was time to take action. The day of reckoning was drawing closer, but I knew I couldn't rush things. I started by building trust with a few employees who seemed genuinely kind but were stuck in the toxic environment. One of them was an older janitor named Mr. Harris. He had worked for the company for over 20 years and had seen the gradual decline in morale. "They used to treat us like family," he said one evening as we cleaned the lobby together. "Now, it's all about squeezing us for every penny." His words stung because they mirrored my own observations. "Things will change," I promised him, though I kept my tone neutral. He gave me a sad smile. "I've heard that before, kid. But I hope you're right." My resolve was tested when I saw Ava berating a young man named Carlos in front of everyone. He had accidentally spilled coffee on her desk while delivering a report. "You're a complete idiot," she snapped. "Do you know how much this desk costs? More than your pathetic salary, that's for sure." Carlos stood there, his face turning red with embarrassment. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Enough," I said firmly, stepping forward. Ava spun around, her eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" "You don't have the right to speak to him like that," I replied, my voice calm but unyielding. "Everyone makes mistakes." Her face twisted in anger. "You're a janitor. Know your place." I didn't respond, but I made a mental note that Ava's reign of terror would soon come to an end. I began taking small steps to empower the employees. I started anonymously leaving encouraging notes in the break room and slipping small gifts into lockers, things like coffee vouchers or thank you cards. At first, people were skeptical. "What's the catch?" someone asked. "There is no catch," I said quietly one day, overhearing their doubts. Sometimes kindness doesn't need a reason. The atmosphere began to shift, albeit slightly. People started smiling more, and there was a spark of hope that hadn't been there before. I needed allies to take down Ava and the toxic supervisors. I carefully observed which employees had influence among their peers. One of them was Maria, a no-nonsense team leader who always stood up for her team, even when it put her at odds with management. I approached her during her lunch break, carefully choosing my words. "Maria, I admire the way you stand up for people here." She raised an eyebrow. "What's your angle?" "No angle," I replied. "I just think this place could be better, and I want to help." She studied me for a moment before nodding. "All right, janitor. Let's see what you've got." With Maria's help, we orchestrated a small but impactful act of defiance. One of the supervisors, Greg, had been notorious for making employees stay late without pay. Maria and I gathered evidence and anonymously reported him to HR. To my surprise, Ava tried to cover for Greg, dismissing the complaints as exaggerations. That's when I decided to take things to the next level. I secretly recorded Ava berating an employee and forwarded the video to the company's ethics hotline. The video went viral internally, and the employees finally had proof of her behavior. The backlash was immediate. Ava was furious, but she had no idea who was behind the leak. As the days passed, word of the anonymous whistleblower spread like wildfire. I watched as employees who had once been disheartened began to find their voices. Maria, in particular, became a beacon of hope. She started organizing after-hours meetings in secret, where employees shared their grievances and brainstormed ways to push back against the toxic management. One night, Maria invited me to one of these gatherings. The break room felt alive for the first time in years as people spoke openly. "This place has drained us for too long," one employee said, slamming his fist on the table. "It's time we demand change." I listened intently, my heart swelling with pride and sadness. These people had endured so much, and yet they still found the strength to fight back. After everyone had spoken, Maria turned to me. "You've been quiet, janitor. What do you think?" I hesitated, knowing I couldn't reveal my identity just yet. "I think you're all braver than you realize," I said. "And I think change is closer than you think." The next morning, I decided to take a risk. I left a detailed letter outlining Ava's abuses on the desk of the company's compliance officer. The letter included dates, names, and specific incidents, enough to start a formal investigation. But I knew Ava wouldn't go down without a fight. Sure enough, later that day, she stormed into the break room, her face a mask of fury. "Listen up, everyone," she barked. "Whoever's been spreading lies about me better come forward now, or there will be consequences." Her threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. I glanced around, noticing the fear in my colleagues' eyes. But no one spoke up. Ava's grip on this company was slipping, and she knew it. Ava began targeting employees she suspected of being behind the rebellion. Maria was one of the first to be called into her office. When Maria returned, her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. She threatened to fire me, Maria whispered to me later. Said if I didn't tell her who's been spreading rumors, I'd be out of a job. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't let her scare you. She's losing control, and she knows it." Maria nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Ava's reign of terror wasn't over yet. Despite Ava's intimidation tactics, the employees began to band together. Maria and I worked late into the night, drafting a formal complaint that dozens of employees signed. The document was a damning indictment of Ava's leadership, detailing everything from verbal abuse to unethical business practices. Once it was finalized, we submitted it directly to the board of directors, bypassing Ava entirely. It was a risky move, but we were running out of options. When Ava found out about the complaint, she went on the warpath. She called an emergency meeting, dragging employees into her office one by one. Her goal was clear: to root out the leaders of the rebellion and crush them. But she underestimated the employees' resolve. For the first time, they refused to back down. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," Carlos told her during his meeting. "You can fire me if you want, but you can't silence me." His bravery inspired others to stand up as well. Ava's power was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The board of directors couldn't ignore the growing unrest within the company. They called a meeting to address the complaints, and Ava was forced to defend herself. "I managed to sneak into the meeting as a janitor, blending into the background as Ava tried to spin the situation in her favor. These accusations are baseless," she claimed. "It's just a few disgruntled employees trying to stir up trouble." But the board wasn't convinced. They announced that an independent investigation would be conducted, and Ava's authority was temporarily suspended. It was a small victory, but it was enough to give the employees hope. As the investigation unfolded, more and more evidence of Ava's misconduct came to light. Employees who had been too afraid to speak up before began sharing their stories, and the picture that emerged was damning. Ava tried to discredit the witnesses, but her lies only made her look worse. The board had no choice but to place her on indefinite leave while they decided her fate. With Ava out of the picture, I knew it was time to reveal my true identity. I called an all-hands meeting, inviting every employee to attend. When I stepped onto the stage, wearing a suit instead of my janitor's uniform, the room erupted in whispers. "My name is Isabella Carter," I announced, "and I'm here to set things right." The shock on their faces was priceless. For the first time, they realized that the janitor they had ignored or dismissed was actually the daughter of the company's founder. For a moment, the room was dead silent. Then the murmurs started. Some employees looked shocked. Others seemed embarrassed, no doubt recalling the times they had dismissed me or treated me poorly. Maria was the first to step forward. You're Mr. Carter's daughters?" I nodded.
Yes.
"I've spent the last few weeks working alongside you to see firsthand what this company has become. And let me tell you, what I've seen has left me both heartbroken and furious." A few heads dropped, and I could sense the mixture of guilt and relief in the room. "I came here disguised as a janitor because I wanted the truth. I needed to know how you were being treated, and now I do. But I promise you this. Things are going to change." After the meeting, I headed straight for Ava's office. She had been temporarily suspended, but I knew she was still lurking around, trying to salvage her reputation. When I entered, she looked up, her expression twisting into a sneer. "Ah, the princess finally reveals herself. Come to gloats." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I came to let you know that your reign is over. The board has all the evidence they need to remove you permanently. You won't hurt anyone here again." Ava leaned back in her chair, smirking. "You think you've won? These people don't care about you. The moment things get tough, they'll turn on you, just like they did to me." Her words stung, but I refused to let her see it. "The difference is I'm not like you. I'm here to rebuild what you tried to destroy." The next few weeks were some of the most challenging of my life. With Ava officially removed from her position, I stepped in as interim CEO. My first priority was to rebuild trust with the employees, and that meant listening to their concerns and acting on them. I held daily meetings, inviting employees to share their experiences and suggestions for improvement. At first, only a few people showed up, but as word spread that I was genuinely interested in their input, more and more employees began attending. One of the most emotional moments came when Carlos stood up and said, "I never thought someone in your position would care about people like me. Thank you for proving me wrong." As I delved deeper into the company's operations, I discovered just how much damage Ava and her team had done. Employees were owed thousands of dollars in unpaid overtime, safety protocols had been ignored, and morale was at an all-time low. I immediately implemented a series of changes. Employees were compensated for their unpaid overtime. A new HR team was brought in to ensure fair treatment for everyone. An anonymous feedback system was introduced, giving employees a safe way to report issues. The changes didn't happen overnight, but slowly, I began to see a shift in the company's culture. One of my favorite moments came during an employee appreciation event I organized. For years, the hardworking people behind the scenes had gone unnoticed, but now it was their time to shine. Mr. Harris, the janitor who had shown me kindness when I first started, was among those honored. When I called his name, he looked genuinely surprised. Mr. Harris, your dedication and hard work have not gone unnoticed, I said. Thank you for everything you've done for this company. He wiped away a tear as the room erupted into applause. Not everyone was happy about the changes. A small group of supervisors who had benefited from Ava's toxic policies began pushing back, spreading rumors, and trying to undermine my authority. One day, I caught two of them whispering in the hallway. She thinks she can fix everything, one of them sneered. Let's see how long she lasts. I confronted them directly. If you have something to say it to my face, I said, my voice steady. They looked startled, but I didn't back down. This company is moving forward. If you can't handle that, you're welcome to leave. While I was making progress professionally, the emotional toll of the past few weeks was beginning to weigh on me. Late one night, as I sat alone in my office, I found myself questioning if I was strong enough to keep going. My father's portrait hung on the wall behind me, his eyes seeming to offer encouragement. You always said this company was about people, Dad, I whispered. I hope I'm making you proud. To symbolize the company's new beginning, I decided to renovate the break room, a space that had once been a source of dread for employees. The walls were repainted, new furniture was brought in, and a small library of books and games was added. When the renovations were complete, I gathered the employees for the unveiling. This is more than just a break room, I said. It's a reminder that this company values you. You are the heart and soul of everything we do. The applause that followed was deafening. As the months went by, the company began to thrive. Productivity soared, not because of fear or intimidation, but because employees felt valued and supported. One day, Maria approached me with a smile. You've done it, Isabella. You've brought this company back to life. I shook my head. We did it. None of this would have been possible without all of you. The journey had been long and challenging, but as I looked out over the crowd of smiling employees at our annual celebration, I knew it had all been worth it. This company was no longer a place of fear and despair. It was a place of hope, respect, and opportunity, a true reflection of my father's vision. As I stepped down from the stage, Carlos approached me. You changed my life, he said. I smiled. No, Carlos. You changed mine.
The music stopped before it even started. I stood at the front of the small, tastefully decorated wedding hall, staring at rows of empty white chairs. My bouquet felt heavier than bricks, my fingers trembling so badly that a rose petal slipped to the floor. The photographer, looking uncomfortable, adjusted his camera like maybe if he fidgeted enough, he could disappear. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Should we wait a little longer? The event coordinator whispered, her eyes darting toward the giant double doors like they might burst open any second with a flood of smiling relatives. I swallowed hard, my throat raw from pretending to smile for the last hour. We've already waited 45 minutes, I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. They're not coming. My maid of honor, Lily, my only real friend in the world, gave me a sympathetic glance and squeezed my hand. They're missing out. Forget them. You look incredible. But my chest burned. They weren't just missing out. They had chosen not to come. Every single one of them. My parents, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, even the relatives I barely knew but who'd RSVP'd months ago. All of them were at my brother's flashy new business launch, the same event my father had been hyping up for months. I had scheduled my wedding for today months before my brother announced his grand opening. My family didn't even pretend to try to split their time. They just told me, you'll understand, it's important for him. And here I was, in a hall so quiet the hum of the air conditioning felt like an insult. The officiant cleared his throat gently. We can still proceed? No, I said, my voice cutting through the awkward stillness. We're not doing this like this. Not when it's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Lily shot me a worried look. You're calling it off? No, I whispered, tears burning the backs of my eyes. I'm just not letting them take this from me. I picked up my phone from the table where I'd left it earlier, intending to shove it into my clutch. But the screen lit up with a single message. From Ryan, my husband-to-be. Smile. Confused, I looked around, but he wasn't in sight. Then another notification buzzed in, this time from my call log. 63 missed calls, from Mom, Dad, Uncle David, Aunt Karen, home, and even my brother. The same people who couldn't bother to show up. Lily's eyes went wide. What the hell? I opened the first voicemail, my breath catching when I heard my father's panicked voice. Emily, call us back right now. You need to explain what's going on. Before I could process it, Ryan appeared in the doorway. Not in a tux, but in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. He gave me a small, knowing smile, the kind that said he had already set something in motion. You ready? He asked. I stared at him, torn between dread and relief. Ready for what? For the part where they realize, he said, stepping closer, that they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Ryan didn't waste a second. He took my bouquet, set it aside, and guided me out of the empty hall without looking back. Outside, the valet pulled up our car. The city air felt colder than it should have. My phone buzzed again. Mom, Dad, Jason, all calling like their lives depended on it. What's going on? I asked as Ryan drove off. He smirked faintly. Your family's launch party isn't going as planned. The bank froze their transactions. My head snapped toward him. What? Why? You remember that loan you co-signed for Jason years ago? Turns out your name is still tied to his company's assets. I just asked the bank to clarify your consent. That triggered a hold until things are cleared up. I blinked. You did this today? They chose today, he said simply. And now they're realizing you matter more than they thought. Another call lit my phone. Ryan nodded toward it. Answer on speaker. I picked up. Dad's voice came sharp. Emily, fix this. Your brother's investors are here and the bank is holding everything. Jason's voice cut in, furious. If this is about your wedding, grow up. We'll take you out to dinner later. I felt something steel inside me. You skipped my wedding. Now you can come see me. 7 p.m., Grayson House. Apologize first, then we'll talk about fixing your mess. Silence. Then Dad's clipped, reluctant. Fine. Ryan's hand found mine as I ended the call. Good, he said. You're finally setting the rules. By the time we pulled up to Grayson House, the sun had already dipped low, staining the glass buildings in a pale orange glow. Ryan had chosen the venue well. Neutral, upscale, and very public. It was the kind of place where tempers stayed in check, because too many important people might be watching. Inside, we booked a private glass-walled conference room. The long table gleamed under pendant lights, and the polished floor echoed our footsteps. Ryan wrote 7 p.m. on the corner of the whiteboard, underlining it once. Punctuality matters tonight, he said. At 6:55, Lily arrived, eyes blazing with loyalty. She hugged me hard. If they try anything, I'm staying. No one corners you alone. At 7:10, the glass door finally slid open. My parents entered first, Dad in an overly formal suit, Mom clutching her purse like it was a shield. Jason followed, his jaw tight, his phone in his hand, and behind him trailed a man in his 50s with a businesslike air, Jason's CFO. No, one sat. Let's make this quick, Dad said, already impatient. I didn't move from my spot at the head of the table. Before we discuss anything, I want something clear. You'll apologize for missing my wedding, not because it's polite, but because it's the truth. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Emily, we didn't miss it. You didn't come, I cut in. My tone was even, but it landed like a stone. Dad's jaw flexed. He glanced at Jason, then at Ryan, then back at me. Fine, I'm sorry. Mom gave a quick nod. Yes, we're sorry. Jason didn't speak. His silence said everything. Good, I said. Now, business. Ryan slid a folder across the table. Here's the original loan guarantee Emily signed, the bank's freeze notice, and our email request for clarification. The CFO flipped through the documents, frowning. If we settle the old obligation and provide proof to the bank, the hold will lift tomorrow. Correct, Ryan said. But there are 3 additional conditions. Jason's head snapped up. Conditions? Yes, I said, looking directly at him. 1. You signed a statement acknowledging my name was added under pressure, and you will never use my finances without my consent again. 2. You reimburse every out-of-pocket cost I've covered for your ventures. 3. You send me a written apology that mentions my wedding. It stays private, but I want it. Jason scoffed. This is blackmail. This is boundaries, Ryan said calmly. Something your family has never respected. Dad started to argue, but the CFO cleared his throat. Jason, she has legal grounds, and the longer this goes on, the worse it looks to investors. Jason's glare could have cut glass, but he finally said, Fine, we'll do it. I didn't smile. I simply leaned back in my chair, feeling, for the first time in years, like I wasn't the one being cornered. The agreement was signed before they left Grayson House. Ryan made sure there were 2 witnesses, Lily and the CFO, so there was no chance of them later claiming it never happened. Jason signed last, his pen jabbing the paper like each stroke was punishment. As soon as they were gone, Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. That's step 1. Step 1? I raised an eyebrow. You'll see. The next morning, the calls started again. Only this time, they weren't just from family. My phone was buzzing with numbers I didn't recognize, journalists from local business pages, people wanting a statement about what happened at the launch. I ignored most of them, but curiosity finally got the better of me when Lily texted, Turn on Channel 6. The segment was already halfway through when I flipped on the TV. The reporter stood outside my brother's gleaming new storefront, her hair whipping in the wind, talking over footage from the night before. Sources say a financial hold disrupted. Transactions during the grand opening, leaving customers unable to complete purchases. Several investors left early, and some vendors have expressed frustration over the delay. The camera cut to footage of Jason, looking red-faced, gesturing at a small group of investors with his hands in the air. Behind him, employees milled about awkwardly, handing out free coffee in an attempt to keep people from leaving. The caption at the bottom of the screen read, Launch Day, Freeze, Sparks, Questions. Ryan came up behind me, coffee in hand, and smirked at the screen. They'll spin it as a technical glitch, but the investors aren't stupid. They'll want answers, and the bank paperwork will show exactly why it happened. And my name will be right there, I murmured. Yep, Ryan said. Not as the villain, but as the guarantor they overlooked. The one they treated like she didn't matter. It hit me then, not just that they'd ignored me on my wedding day, but that they'd erased me for years, even when my signature had literally kept them afloat. Before I could answer, my phone lit up again. This time, it was Jason. I let it go to voicemail, but a text followed instantly. We need to talk, now. Ryan glanced at it, then at me. They'll want to smooth things over. Translation, they'll want you to help clean up their image without taking any of the credit. He was right. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to give them what they wanted. By noon, social media had picked up the story. People were commenting on how odd it was that none of my family had been at my wedding, thanks to a few guests who'd posted photos of the empty venue and tagged me. The posts weren't viral yet, but the narrative was forming, and it wasn't flattering for them. That evening, my parents showed up at our apartment unannounced. Ryan answered the door but didn't invite them in. Emily, my mother started, her tone a carefully measured blend of concern and accusation. We need to get ahead of this. People are talking. Let them, I said, crossing my arms. Everything they're saying is true. Dad's jaw tightened. This isn't good for the family name. Then maybe the family should have shown up for mine, I said sharply. You made your priorities clear. Now so have I. Jason stepped forward, looking more worn down than I'd ever seen him. Emily, please, investors are pulling back. If you talk to them, reassure them. I cut him off. You want me to fix this? Then admit publicly that I was there for you when you needed me, and you couldn't even show up when I needed you. Otherwise, you can clean up your own mess. The silence stretched. Ryan stood beside me, his presence solid and unshakable. Finally, Jason muttered something under his breath and turned to leave, my parents following reluctantly. When the door closed, Ryan smiled faintly. Step 2, complete. I frowned. And step 3? He grinned. That's the part where they realize you're not just the person they underestimated. You're the one they can't ignore anymore. 2 weeks later, my family's polished facade had cracks deep enough for the whole city to see. It started with a quiet article in the local business journal, buried on page 6. Launch day freeze traced to overlooked guarantor. It was factual, almost dry. Just a short piece explaining that my name had been on key loan documents, that the freeze had been a standard banking procedure, and that it was resolved the next day. But then, it got legs. The article was picked up by a popular regional news blog, the kind that thrived on human interest twists. They added a headline that made people click. The sister they forgot, how a wedding snub exposed a launch day disaster. That was when the messages started pouring in. Old college friends I hadn't heard from in years, former coworkers, even distant relatives who'd never invited me anywhere suddenly remembered I existed. Half were offering support, the other half wanted the inside scoop. I ignored all of them. Instead, I focused on building something that had nothing to do with my family. Ryan and I had been talking about it for months, turning my small freelance design work into a full studio. Now, with all this attention, it felt like the perfect time. We rented a corner office in a shared workspace, painted it the softest shade of cream, and put my name, Emily Gray Design, on the door. Lily helped me design the logo. Ryan handled the legal filings. I worked late into the night, not because I had to, but because it felt like mine. And then came the gala. Every year, the city's Chamber of Commerce hosted a black tie fundraiser for local entrepreneurs. Jason had been invited to showcase his launch. I hadn't planned to go, but when an invitation arrived addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Ryan Gray, I knew exactly who had pulled the strings. "You're thinking of going," Ryan said one night, watching me twirl the heavy cardstock in my hands. "I'm thinking of showing them," I said, "but not in the way they expect." On the night of the gala, I wore a sleek midnight blue gown that caught the light like water. Ryan looked devastating in a black tux. As we walked in, I could feel eyes turning, whispers starting. My parents were already there, Jason at their side, all of them wearing expressions so tight they could shatter glass. They didn't approach us, not yet. The event moved quickly, speeches, awards, polite applause. Then came the networking. That's when it happened. A group of investors I vaguely recognized from Jason's launch approached me, not him. "You're Emily Gray," one of them said warmly. "We've been hearing a lot about you lately." Jason was only a few feet away, watching, his jaw set. "Yes," I said, smiling. "I run Emily Gray Design. We specialize in branding and digital strategy." They peppered me with questions, asked for my card, and nodded approvingly when I told them about recent projects. It was subtle, but the shift was there. My name carried weight now, separate from his. Finally, my parents came over. My mother's smile was brittle. "Emily, darling, you look lovely." "Thank you," I said, tone neutral. Dad cleared his throat. "We wanted to say we're proud of what you're doing." It sounded rehearsed, like a line they'd agreed on before walking over. "I appreciate that," I replied, "but I'm not doing any of it for your approval." Jason stepped forward. "Emily." His voice was quieter now, almost careful. "I know we screwed up. I can't change that. But maybe we could work together. Your design work could—" "No," I said, cutting him off gently but firmly. "You had years to see me. You didn't. And now I'm not interested in being an accessory to your success story." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Ryan slipped his hand into mine, and we walked away, leaving them standing in the middle of the glittering room, surrounded by people who had just seen the power shift. That night, as we drove home, I looked out at the city lights and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Light, unburdened. "They'll keep calling," Ryan said. "I know," I said, smiling faintly. "But now they're calling me, and I get to decide if I answer." And for once, I didn't feel like I owed them anything.
"You're not family anymore," Mom hissed, her voice sharp as glass as she turned her back to me. The words cut deeper than any slap could have. I stood frozen for a second, my heart pounding in my ears. "Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin." The living room was full. Relatives, cousins, neighbors who'd dropped by because my sister just announced her engagement. The clinking of glasses and murmurs stopped the second my mother's words hit the air. I swallowed hard, trying not to let them see the way my hands trembled. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice cracking but loud enough for everyone to hear. "After everything I've done, after the nights I stayed up helping Dad with the business, after all the years I carried this family when no one else would, you're just erasing me?" Mom didn't turn around. She just lifted her wine glass, dismissing me like I was dirt under her heel. "Pick up your things, Claire. Don't make a scene." That broke me, but it also lit something inside me. I felt every pair of eyes on me, some pitiful, some gleeful. My sister smirked like she had finally won the invisible war she'd been fighting with me since childhood. I bent down, picked up my worn leather bag from the floor, and slung it over my shoulder. "Don't worry," I said coldly, my voice steady now. "I won't be back. But remember, you chose this." The silence in the room was suffocating. Even Dad looked away, ashamed. No one spoke up for me. No one. I turned, walked to the door, and left. That night, I barely slept. Every word replayed in my head like a knife twisting deeper. The years of being the invisible daughter, the one who sacrificed, the one who was mocked for not being enough. It all rushed back. But they didn't know one thing. I wasn't alone anymore. And the next morning, when the heavy knock thundered on their front door, my family had no idea who was standing on the other side, or how his very first words would turn their smug smiles into stone. The front door rattled under the heavy knock. My mom frowned, clearly irritated. "Who is that so early?" she muttered, setting down her glass. It was barely 9 in the morning. My sister, Emily, strutted across the living room in her silk robe. "Probably a delivery for me," she bragged, flashing her engagement ring at the group of relatives still lounging around after last night's gathering. But when she swung open the door, her mouth fell open. Standing there wasn't a delivery man. It was Ethan Matthews, my husband. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark tailored suit clung perfectly to his frame. His jawline was sharp, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were burning with a cold fire. The entire room fell silent. Good. "Morning?" Ethan said calmly, his voice cutting through the air like steel. "I'm here for my wife." Gasps rippled through the relatives. My mom stiffened. My dad's face went pale. Emily stammered, Wife?" Ethan's gaze swept over the room, lingering on each face until every person lowered their eyes. Finally, his gaze settled on my mother. He stepped inside without asking permission, the sound of his polished shoes echoing off the hardwood floor. "You said Claire isn't family anymore," Ethan said, his tone deadly serious. "That was your mistake, because the second you turned your back on her, you turned your back on me." Mom's lips parted, but no words came. The power had shifted so fast she didn't know how to react. Ethan continued, his voice carrying the authority of a man used to commanding rooms full of executives and board members. "For years, Claire carried your burdens. She sacrificed her dreams, her peace, and her happiness just to earn scraps of your approval. And how do you repay her? By humiliating her in front of a room full of people?" Dad tried to interrupt, his voice shaky. "Now, wait just a second." "No, you wait," Ethan snapped, his voice sharper now. "You sat there while your wife cut your own daughter out of her family like she was trash. You let it happen. You've been letting it happen her entire life. And I'm here to tell you, it ends today." The room was frozen. Emily looked like she wanted to disappear. Even the nosy relatives leaned back in their seats, trying not to breathe too loudly. Mom's face flushed red, anger and embarrassment battling in her expression. "You don't get to walk in here and lecture me. This is my house, not—" "For long," Ethan interrupted, his tone suddenly calm again, almost chilling. "See, the thing you don't know, Margaret," he said her name with deliberate coldness, "is that this house It's not yours anymore. The air shifted instantly. My mother blinked, her jaw slack. What are you talking about? Ethan smirked, pulling an envelope from his inner jacket pocket. This house has been in foreclosure for months. Claire and I bought it out. As of yesterday, we're the legal owners. The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped inside then, my legs shaking but my heart steady. Every face turned toward me. I locked eyes with my mother, the woman who had just erased me from her family hours before. You said I wasn't family anymore, I said softly, but my voice carried across the room. You're right, I'm not. I don't need to be. Because I have a family who actually loves me, and a husband who respects me enough to fight for me. Emily's eyes darted around, desperate for someone to defend her. Dad buried his face in his hands. Mom stumbled back, her glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the floor. This is a trick. You're lying. Read the papers yourself. Ethan cut in smoothly, tossing the envelope onto the coffee table. You pushed Claire away, and in doing so, you lost everything you thought you controlled. I glanced around the room, my voice steady as I added, all of you laughed when she called me useless last night. All of you stayed silent when she told me I wasn't family anymore. But silence is complicity, and today, you're going to see what that silence cost you. The relatives shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between me and Ethan. Mom's hands shook as she fumbled with the papers. Her face drained of color as she scanned them, realizing every word was true. The Queen of Control had just lost her throne. And Ethan, standing beside me, made sure everyone in that room knew it. The papers trembled in my mother's hands as she read line after line, her lips moving silently, her face draining of color with every word. This isn't possible, she whispered, her voice breaking. How could you? Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate. Because while you were too busy mocking your daughter, dismissing her as worthless, she was building a life you knew nothing about. And now, you're standing in a house that no longer belongs to you. The words landed like a hammer. Gasps rippled again through the room. My aunt covered her mouth. My uncle muttered something under his breath. My sister Emily stepped forward, her voice rising. This is ridiculous. Claire, owning our house? She can't even... She stopped mid-sentence, realizing she was exposing exactly how little she thought of me. I looked at her squarely, my voice sharp. Can't even what, Emily? Can't even succeed? Can't even live without being your family's punching bag? You always thought you were above me. But tell me, who's above who now? Her face flushed red, her fists clenching. Dad finally spoke up, his voice heavy. Claire, please, let's not do this in front of everyone. I snapped my gaze to him, anger bubbling. Oh, now you care about appearances? Last night when I begged you with my eyes to stop her from humiliating me, you looked away. You always look away. Maybe that's worse than anything Mom ever said. He dropped his head, shame etched into his features. For the first time, I saw regret flicker across his eyes. But regret didn't erase years of silence. Mom slammed the papers onto the coffee table, her voice shrill and cracking. So this is revenge then? You think owning this house makes you better than us? Ethan's reply was calm, but every word dripped with authority. No, this isn't about revenge. This is about respect, something you never gave your daughter. All Claire wanted was love. You refused her that, so she built a life without you. And whether you like it or not, she's stronger than you ever imagined. I stepped closer to Mom, my hands no longer trembling. You told me I wasn't family anymore. Fine, I accept that. But hear me now. You're not in control of me anymore. Not my choices, not my future. not my happiness. Her eyes widened, tears brimming, but her pride kept her mouth sealed. Emily tried again, desperate, her voice high-pitched. "You'll regret this, Claire. You think this makes you powerful? You're just—" Ethan cut her off with a single glare that silenced the room. "Enough! You've all had years to break her down. Those days are over." I felt the weight lift off me in that moment. The years of rejection, the sting of every cruel laugh, the hollow silence of never being defended. All of it was being crushed under the look on their faces now. For once, I wasn't the weak one. For once, they were the ones cornered. The relatives shifted uneasily, no longer on my parents' side. Some whispered, others avoided looking at me altogether. The same people who laughed at me last night were now pretending they hadn't. I straightened my shoulders and looked around the room. This isn't just about property. This is about me finally walking away with my dignity. You wanted me gone. Mom? Congratulations. You got what you wanted, but you didn't expect me to walk out stronger than you. The silence was brutal. My mom's face was a storm of anger and disbelief. Emily's jaw was clenched so tight I thought her teeth might break. Ethan placed a hand gently on my back, steady and grounding. "We'll give you until the end of the week to move out," he said calmly. "After that, you're trespassing." Mom gasped. Emily's hands flew to her mouth. Dad whispered something that sounded like a plea, but it didn't matter, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for a seat at their table. I was standing tall at my own, and judging by the way every pair of eyes in that room watched me, none of them would ever forget it. The air in the living room was thick, like everyone was holding their breath. My mother's knuckles were white, as she gripped the edge of the couch, glaring at me with eyes that had once only shown scorn. But now, fear. "You can't just erase us," she spat, her voice breaking. "We're your blood." I exhaled slowly, my voice calm but firm. "Blood doesn't make a family. Actions do. And when you told me I wasn't family anymore, I finally believed you. So don't twist this now. You made your choice." Emily stomped forward, desperate to regain control, her ring flashing under the light. "Fine, take the house. You'll see what it's like when everyone laughs at you instead of us. You'll always be beneath us, Claire. Always." Ethan's laugh was short, sharp, and humorless. "Beneath you?" He stepped toward her, towering over her as she shrank back. Claire built her life from nothing. She worked, she sacrificed, she earned everything she has. You've lived off handouts and manipulation. When the lights go out and the walls close in, let's see who people respect more, the woman who fought for her dignity, or the spoiled daughter who only ever took. Emily's lip quivered, but she turned her face away, unwilling to meet his eyes. Dad spoke again, his voice rough, almost pleading. "Claire, I know I should have defended you. I know I failed, but please, don't do this. Don't cut us out." I stared at him, my chest tight. A part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to the idea that maybe he cared. But the memory of every time he stayed silent was louder than his apology. "I gave you years to stand up for me," I whispered. "You chose silence. Now I'm choosing peace." The relatives were shifting, some standing, realizing they were witnessing the collapse of a family they once admired. Their murmurs filled the room, sympathy from a few, shame from others. But none of it mattered anymore. Ethan slipped his arm around me, his presence steady as a rock. "We're done here," he said flatly. But I wasn't. Not yet. I turned back to my mother, meeting her eyes one last time. "You once told me I was a burden. Last night you told me I wasn't family. Today I tell you this. I forgive you, but I will never forget. You'll live every day knowing the daughter you threw away became stronger than you ever imagined." For the first time, her face cracked. Her pride faltered, her chin trembling, but no words came. I stepped toward the door, Ethan guiding me. As we reached it, I paused and turned back to the room one final time. "Enjoy your week," Ethan said coldly. "After that, this is no longer your home." And with that, we walked out. The sunlight outside hit my face like a cleansing fire. My chest felt lighter than it had in years. For so long, I had begged for a place in their world. Now, I had built my own. Ethan squeezed my hand as we reached the car. "You did it," he said softly. I smiled through the tears in my eyes. "No, we did it." Behind us, the house stood quiet, heavy with silence. For once, it wasn't me carrying the weight of shame. It was them. And as I drove away, leaving behind the family that had tried to erase me, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't anger, or money, or control. It's living free, finally free from those who never wanted to see you rise.
It was my dad's birthday, a big deal in my family. We're talking rented venue, chandeliers, tuxedos, the kind of place where they pass around shrimp on trays like it's a currency. Everyone who mattered was invited, except me. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I got the message 2 days before. Not a phone call. Not even a text. My mother said it to my face while I was standing in the middle of the family room, holding a small gift bag like some clueless outsider. "You're not invited," she said, loud enough for the cousins and aunts to hear. "Don't embarrass yourself by showing up." I looked around. No one defended me. Not my dad. Not my sister Tessa. No one. It was like I was suddenly invisible. And the worst part? I smiled. I don't know why. Maybe because if I didn't smile, I'd cry. So I just stood there, nodded once, and left. But here's the thing. I didn't leave out of shame. I didn't run home to cry into a pillow or scream at the wall. I drove straight downtown to my office. Yes, my office. Because what none of them knew, not even Tessa, was that I wasn't the screw-up they kept calling me behind closed doors. I was their nightmare dressed like a silent success story. They thought I was working some average admin job. They didn't know I owned the entire damn company that Tessa's boyfriend just signed a contract with. I didn't flaunt it. I never needed to. I built Carter Strategic Group from scratch. From flipping coffee at 6 a.m. to closing deals with clients that paid more in a quarter than my family earned in a year. And I kept quiet because I didn't need their approval. I just wanted their peace. But that night, that changed everything. Because after I left the house, something wild happened. Tessa's boyfriend, Zach, this clean-cut, tailored suit, Wall Street energy guy, he showed up at the party all ready to propose. He had no idea what had gone down before he walked in. And when he asked, "Hey, where's Olivia?" and someone laughed and said, "Oh, she's not invited," he blinked once, then turned white. "That's my boss," he said. Just like that. In front of everyone. The room froze. I wasn't there, but Zach told me later it was like someone dropped a nuclear bomb in the middle of the party. My mom stopped mid-sip. My dad nearly dropped his fork. My sister. God, I wish I could have seen her face. Because when Zach realized I was the Olivia Carter, the CEO, the name on every one of his contracts, the reason he had a 6-figure bonus coming, he looked around that room and realized just how badly they'd screwed up. And they did. They screwed up so hard that when Zach called me an hour later, breathless and pacing outside the venue, all he said was, "They're panicking. They want to talk to you." And I told him, calmly, "They can send an email." That's when I knew the game had changed. I wasn't the black sheep anymore. I was the wolf they let go too soon. After Zach called me, I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Just that one line, "They can send an email," that was enough. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't scrambling to prove myself to them. I wasn't desperate for a seat at their table. I owned the table now. And I was deciding who got to sit down. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls. One from my dad. 2 from Tessa. And the rest? My mother. No voicemails. Just desperate red bubbles staring back at me like a guilty conscience I didn't have anymore. Then came the text. From my aunt. We didn't know, sweetie. Your mother didn't mean it like that. From Tessa. Zach overreacted. Let's just talk. From my mom? You embarrassed us last night. This isn't how family behaves. That one actually made me laugh out loud. I embarrassed them? By leaving quietly while they humiliated me in front of relatives and friends? See, this is the thing about people like my mother. They don't actually feel guilt. They feel discomfort. And discomfort makes them dangerous when their image is on the line. So I ignored them. I went to work. I took meetings. I signed off on a non-profit tech fund that morning worth more than my parents' house. I even had lunch with Zach. He showed up looking nervous, like he thought I might bite. I didn't know, he kept saying. I swear, if I'd known. I cut him off. Zach, stop apologizing. You didn't hurt me. He looked down at his coffee. Your family did. I nodded slowly. And now they're scared.
Not sorry.
Scared. He looked up. Do you blame them? I don't waste time blaming people anymore, I said. I just don't invite them back in. Zach hesitated. Then he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a velvet box.
Small. Square.
He set it on the table between us. I blinked. What's this? He didn't open it. He just said, it was supposed to be for Tessa. Last night. At the party. I stared at the box. You're giving it to me? No, he said, then exhaled. I'm returning it. Because last night, when I saw how they treated you, something shifted. I saw through it all.
The show.
The status. The fake smiles. And I thought, if this is what they do to someone like you, then what the hell am I even marrying into? I didn't say anything. He slid the box back into his pocket. Anyway, I'm done with Tessa. That surprised me. Not because I thought he should stay with her, but because I didn't think anyone ever stood up to my family like that. That night, I did something bold. I sent an invite to the entire Carter family. An invitation to my company's annual gala. Black tie. Champagne towers. Charity auctions. All under the name Carter Strategic Group. I booked the Pearl Ballroom, one of the most expensive venues in Dallas, and made sure my name was plastered on every wall, every banner, every press release. But the real move? I listed them, all of them, as guests, not VIPs,
Not family.
just attendees. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't slamming the door. It's holding it open and letting them see what they walked away from. You should have seen their faces when the invitations arrived. My mom called within an hour of receiving hers. Not to apologize. Not to ask how I was doing. Just this clipped, tight voice saying, "We got your invitation." I sipped my coffee and replied, "You're welcome." She hesitated. Is this some kind of stunt? No, I said. It's a celebration. Of success. Of growth. Of surviving what tried to bury me. She didn't say anything for a second. Then came the sigh. The one I knew so well. The one she used every time I didn't fit her mold. Olivia, you know how this looks. I do, I said. And I'm okay with that. Then I hung up. The night of the gala came fast. I showed up in a floor-length black gown. Simple, sleek, powerful. No diamonds, no show. Just elegance and presence. The room was buzzing. Over 400 guests, including names from Forbes, local politicians, media reps, and more than one person who once told me I wasn't executive material. And then my family arrived. They walked in like they owned the place. Even after everything. Angela wore a navy blue dress that tried too hard. My dad looked stiff in his rented tux. And Tessa? She showed up alone. No Zach, no ring. I watched them from across the ballroom. They hesitated at the entrance, not sure where to go, not sure who to talk to. Because here, they weren't the top of the food chain anymore. They were just names on a guest list. I waited. I made them sweat. Then, near the end of the evening, I approached. Olivia, my father said first. You look stunning. I nodded politely. Thank you. Angela's voice cracked just slightly. This event, it's beautiful. I know. Then Tessa stepped forward. Why did you invite us? I looked her dead in the eye. Because I wanted you to see what you walked away from. Silence. No one moved. No one knew what to say. So I filled the space. You treated me like I was disposable. Like I was nothing. You humiliated me in front of people who once called me family. And the entire time, I was building this. While you whispered about me behind closed doors, I was signing deals, creating jobs, becoming the kind of person you couldn't even recognize last week. My mother tried to force a smile. You've changed. No, I said. I just stopped shrinking. Then I excused myself to greet actual guests, people who saw me long before I had titles and status. And as I walked away, I caught a glimpse of them in the mirror behind the champagne bar. They weren't smiling anymore. They weren't superior. They were small. Because in a room full of power and purpose, they were the only ones who didn't belong. I didn't look back at them again that night. After I left them standing there, awkward, out of place, visibly shrinking inside their designer outfits, I walked straight to the small stage near the center of the ballroom, adjusted the microphone, and waited as the room slowly fell silent. A few people clinked glasses. A few whispered to their plus ones.
But then someone noticed me.
And then another. Until the air was thick with a hush I had never once received at any family dinner, any birthday, any graduation, where my achievements had always been either ignored or handed off as luck. But this was mine. I took a breath and smiled. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, for celebrating something that didn't come easy, didn't come fast, and definitely didn't come with applause. I paused, eyes scanning the room, lingering for just a second on Angela's stiff posture, Tessa's crossed arms, my father's downcast eyes. You see, no one claps for you when you're in the grind. No one notices when you're staying up late just to make rent, or when you're eating ramen 5 nights a week so you can afford a startup license. There's no applause when you're driving an Uber on weekends so your business can stay afloat. And there's certainly no applause when you're rebuilding your life after the people closest to you decide you're not worth a seat at the table anymore. Some guests murmured. A few nodded slowly. I went on. But I didn't build this company to get revenge. I didn't grind to throw a party just to make anyone uncomfortable. I built Carter Strategic because there are people in this world who are underestimated every single day.
Who are told they don't belong.
Who are pushed to the margins of their own lives. My voice didn't shake. It didn't waver. It had grown too strong for that. And I built this. I gestured to the chandeliers, the flowers, the 100+ staff in crisp uniforms, the buzzing press cameras near the back, to remind those people, you don't have to beg for respect. You don't have to bend to be accepted. You just have to keep building, even if no one believes in you, because someday they'll have to walk into a room with your name on every wall. Applause erupted. Not the polite kind. The kind that came from people who felt it. From other women in business. From self-made founders. From the intern who once sat on the floor with me eating cheap tacos while we planned the company's first campaign. From people who had climbed out of places no one ever applauded. I stepped down, and the rest of the night moved on. Donations were made, partnerships were announced, and people danced under lights I paid for with every late night I'd survived alone. But let me tell you what stayed with me. It wasn't the speeches. It wasn't the headlines the next morning. It was what happened as I left the ballroom. My father, Charles Carter, was waiting by the door. He looked older than he did just hours before. Like the weight of the truth had finally landed on his shoulders. Olivia, he said, voice low. I didn't know how much I hurt you. I nodded. You didn't want to know.
He looked down.
Your mother, she always had her way. I just tried to keep the peace. That's the problem, I said. You kept the peace for her. Not for me. He sighed, deep and heavy. You're right. I waited, unsure if anything else would come. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled something out. It was the gift I had left on the table, the leather-bound journal. He held it out to me. I couldn't bring myself to open it last night, he said. I opened it this morning. The first page, you wrote something. I nodded once.
Yeah.
I did. I never gave you a chance to say it to my face, he said. But I want you to know, I read every word. And I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. He looked at me then, eyes moist. And for the first time in years, I saw something behind them that wasn't guilt, or pride, or performance. I saw regret. Real, jagged regret. I didn't hug him. I didn't cry. I just nodded once and walked past. Because forgiveness isn't always about opening your arms. Sometimes it's about walking away finally free. After that gala, everything changed, but not all at once. Change doesn't arrive in a neat little box. It creeps in, one quiet step at a time, and suddenly the entire landscape looks different. My father never returned to the man he used to be, not the harsh, silent one, and not the loving dad I once remembered. But he started trying. He sent messages. He mailed old photos from when I was a kid. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. Some wounds don't need conversations, they need time. As for Tessa, she didn't say a word at the gala.
Not one.
She just stood there, arms folded, jaw clenched, surrounded by a world that didn't revolve around her anymore. She didn't walk out. She didn't storm off. She just stayed frozen. 3 days later, she emailed me. No apology. No warmth. Just, Zach left. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply. Because it was never about taking anything from her. It was about finally standing in what was mine. Zach and I? No. We didn't become some perfect love story. He needed to find himself outside of my sister's shadow, and I needed to stand tall without leaning on anyone. But we remained in touch. Respectfully. Genuinely. And my mother? Angela Carter didn't change. People like her don't. She kept pretending nothing happened. Told her social circle I was off doing business things. Tried to spin the whole event like it was part of her plan. Told distant relatives she was proud of me, as if she hadn't kicked me out of the house just weeks before. But I heard something not long after. One of the aunts, her sister, actually called me. We don't talk much, but she said something that stuck. I was visiting your mom last weekend. She had a photo of you on the piano. The gala photo. I asked her about it, and she didn't say anything at first. But then she muttered, "She doesn't belong to us anymore." That sentence hit different. Not because it hurt, but because it was finally true. I didn't belong to them. I belonged to the girl who used to cry in the basement after being called a failure. I belonged to the woman who signed her first company check with shaking hands. I belonged to every version of myself who refused to give up, who stayed up late building dreams out of doubt and duct tape.
And now?
Now I belong to me. I don't look back much. I still see them sometimes, in articles, in social media posts, in old emails that surface like ghosts. But I don't feel hate. I don't feel grief. I just feel free. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't who shares your blood. It's who claps when you rise and stands beside you when you fall. The rest? They'll watch from the sidelines. While you own the whole damn stadium.